Hello and welcome to the Solo Coach Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to those who feel called to take the path less followed. On this show, you'll find a mixture of solo and interview episodes covering all topics associated with personal development and living your best ever life. To find out more, visit thesolocoach.co.uk, @thesolocoach on Insta, or David the Solo Coach on LinkedIn. And now for this week's episode. Enjoy the show. Good afternoon, Calvin, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. I'm glad to be here. So happy to see you again, and I'm excited about what we're going to share today.
Oh, excited doesn't even start to describe how I'm feeling, but and to everyone listening, I want to extend a very warm welcome to you all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to this episode. If you're driving a car, you might need to pull over for what we're about to talk about, because you're probably going to need a notepad. And if you're as captivated as I am when I hear this gentleman speak, you don't want to be doing anything else at the same time. But right. Speaking of which, this gentleman today, we have with us Dr. Calvin Lawrence. He is the founder and CEO of calvinlawrencespeaks.net, through which he offers corporate and business coaching and mentoring sessions, motivational speaking, seminars and presentations. You name it, he does it. He is also a school board member, having held positions of leadership within education for over 40 years. And he's a published author of his fantastic book, The Happy Leader, containing a selection of relatable stories of influence and hope. I met Calvin through our mutual friend, Zoe Bishop. Shout out to you, Zoe. I know you're listening. She connected us and we immediately bonded through our mutual interest in everything personal development and leadership. And I would add that every single conversation that I've had with Calvin has been like a podcast episode in itself and has left me feeling so pumped up afterwards. So strap yourself in, folks, because this is going to be an awesome conversation. No pressure, Calvin.
No pressure.
to get us started, in your many podcast interviews that are out there that I've had the pleasure of listening to, and in your book, you attribute many of your successes to other people. You're extremely humble about your own achievements. So I want to know, where does your sense of humbleness come from? And is that in itself a form of leadership?
David, it's a great question and great way to start the segue to this session. And it's really I can't say it's inborn. I think I learned it from my mom and dad. They were very humble people. And I think it's a characteristic of leadership that I value probably more than any others. And I guess everyone would have a way of ranking or putting their criteria down in terms of who their great leader people are. But if you really think about, and I know there have been some people who may or may not have assumed that the air of humility as their leadership mantra came about. But when I think about leaders, most of the great leaders that I've ever seen or known or read about have had that piece in them. They've understood that it's not about them, it's about who they serve. It's about service above all things. How can I do better? I like this word capacity. What is my capacity to serve and to love and to do and to cherish people? And how can I increase it? And is there a max to my capacity? My experiments with it have been that I don't know that there is, because when I think I'm getting right to the top, it's like there's an extra piece that's moved away, and then there's like a moving target. So I just want to continue to try to explore if there's a capacity, because I haven't reached mine yet. And I know that the leaders and I hope this is answering your question, the leaders that I have been mentored by, that I've observed, that I've used as my role models, have always had that. In fact, David, those are the people that I gravitate towards. I think probably that's another reason why I gravitate towards them, and that is because I've seen the humbleness in them, that they don't need the spotlight, although sometimes it's given to them. What they want is to be able to have an impact on others.
Thank you, Calvin, and that really finally summarizes who you are and your style of serving other people as much as you can, and then serving them some more on top of that. But I'm curious, in this era, we're told to champion ourselves, and I know you've recently been involved in a successful election campaign, and I'm curious as to how you get that balance right of yourself and then serving other people.
Very, very, and I will use the campaign as an example. So I had never campaigned before for the folks that are listening. And what I'll throw in a little caveat here, and it's never too late to do something great or something that stretches yourself because you continue to grow if you stretch yourself. So this was a stretch for me. And one of the things about how did I balance the campaign piece? Well, I was very uncomfortable for the most part, David, because I had never been to where the spotlight was now it's on me about me in terms of running and garnering someone else's vote and having them trust me. Now, trust is a big one, big piece in this. So that kind of goes back to my nature. I would love to gain trust, whether it was working with students in the schools, whether it was working with adult learners, or whether it was working wherever I've been able to be. And so the trust part is again goes back to something we shared maybe even before we got on screen was to always be your own authentic self, to be who you are, to work hard at just and who's this lady. I don't know if she's as familiar in the UK as she is in the United States, but Dolly Parton, a country western singer, but a movie star, you name it, she's done a little bit of everything.
It works nine to
Uh,
five.
Hey, you got it, 9 to 5. That was the movie, that was the song. And so what she said was find out who you are and be intentional about it. And I think it's so powerful that a lot of people don't work on finding out who exactly they may be. And I think maybe if we did a better job in the schools, and I'm picking on schools because I can, because I'm an educator, we would do more in terms of that as opposed to the curriculum. Because if we do the part about the person, I think the curriculum piece will come naturally or more naturally or better than if we work really hard on the instructional pieces and all this other stuff, but we really don't work on the person. And we try to make the person, I think this is good. I'm telling myself something is good. We work on the curriculum, but we should work on the person because the person, if they become their best self, they can do anything, almost anything, and they will flourish in this world because because if we try to standardize everything, then it's a one size fits all kind of a deal, which is not the way life is. I know everybody that I work with, even twins, or if I've been around people who are duplicates, twins, triplets, they're never the same. And so what you got to do is figure out who you are, how different you are from someone else is okay. Because I know we do a comparison thing all the time, but the best thing that you can do is figure out who you are and be really intentional about it. Dolly Parton, thank you for that. Because if you do that, then all the rest kind of falls in line. If you don't, then I think you struggle through life trying to figure out why is it that I don't fit in here, or why I don't, this is not working for me because, but once you know who you are, then you can really set your sails and set a course for some action and some successes that you might not have otherwise.
Thank you, Calvin. So we've got to figure out who we are and then be intentional about it.
Yes.
So that leads me beautifully on to the question of how do we as leaders help our people, whether it's in schools or organizations, how do we help and enable our people to figure out who they are so they can be intentional about it?
I think the first thing is one of these other little points that I like to share with young people and leaders that are emerging leaders, and that is to get to know the people. And so here's the deal on leadership, because you can lead and you can have this, and it's kind of like what I was saying about the curriculum. If you focus on the processes, and you have to do it at some point, processes and procedures are important. Yes, I get that. But the most important thing is people. The most important things are relationships. And so if you work on the people, if you get to know your people, you realize that what Zoe needs may be totally different than what David needs. And that's regardless of gender, that's regardless of ethnicity, that's regardless of, but they may need something different. And then you help to guide them in that direction. You can't force them, you can't, but the best leaders are the ones that just kind of set the tone and allow for the flexibility to grow. And then they provide resources, or they point you in the direction of resources. If they don't have them, they probably know somebody who does, or know a way to get to them, and then they just let you set your sail in that course. And so it's important that as leaders, we don't. I had an old professor who used to say, "Don't get caught up in the minutia of all this stuff that they throw out at you. Understand that this process is very simple. It's really about people, and once you figure out the people part of it, the other things will fall in line, and fall in line a whole lot better, because, and I'll use that trust word again, you get the trust, and then they work with you, and then they're willing to open up about things that maybe they need a little help on. Maybe you're not a counselor, but maybe you can get them to a counselor. Maybe you're not this or that, but you're able to enable them to get to the helps and the services that they need in order to really flourish. And so for me, I don't think there's again, going back to one size fits all, there's no one way to do something with someone. But when you get to know the person, when you get to understand who they are and what their needs are, and what their strengths and weaknesses are, then you're able to maybe help craft, to help encourage, help do whatever to get them to what they need to do in order to grow. And you don't lose them. They learn how to flourish, and they'll do great things whether you're there or whether you're not there. That's the essence of really a true leader, because a leader doesn't always have to be there as well. That leader has already got them on their course that they need to go on. And then I don't know if you'll get the credit. You don't have to. And that's the humility part about it again. Yeah. You don't have to get the credit. You just know that you had a small part to play, a small role to play, and that's worth gold.
Thank you, Calvin. So if we're saying the essence of a true leader is getting to know your people so that then you can serve them better, how do we get to know them without becoming overly familiar to them?
Yes. Yeah. So I was talking to this leader years ago. We were both in this leadership program, and I'll use this because I think it goes to the heart of this. It was like we were invited to a party, but because we were the leaders, we did not need to go to the after party. Now what? And by this, I'm gonna kind of flesh it out. So what he didn't understand was there's a time and a place for everything with regard to leadership. The leaders can get in, and the smart ones figure out how to get out before they're over encompassing, overwhelming, or whatever you want to call it, getting in the way of that progress of the young people. And I use the party because this is a simple example to me. If you were invited to the party because you're the leader, let's say I'm the principal and the teachers invite me, it's a great thing. But they're going to probably have an after party. If they do, I don't need to go to the after party. And in the same way, if I'm a leader, if I'm smart and I know my people, I will figure out, David, the timing of things, when to pull in, when to pull out, when to make a suggestion, when not to, when to back off, because they've got to figure it out themselves. And sometimes, and this may sound harsh, there are some people who if they get to the point where they're really not willing to listen at this point, they may have to fail and then be able to come back to the table. And we used to call it in the school systems the teachable moment. So give them a chance to fail, because failure is probably some of the best teaching that you get if you do it right. But then that opens them up to learning. I'll give you this example. So my son and I used to have these great conversations when he came back. We play American football here a little bit different than on the pitch you guys have in the UK. But sports are sports. Sports are a great bonding time, especially for parents, and if you do it right. And so on the way back, he was more open from these failures to listen to what old dad had to say than he would have ever been if I had just kind of interjected at any point in time. And I kind of figured this out too over time. It's like these are our best conversation times. This is a teachable moment time. If he opens up and he allows me to share something that maybe I've gleaned over the years, it might be helpful to him in the next game or the next whatever. And in a lot of cases, it was. But he was much more open to listening then than he would have been if I had just kind of tried to pound it in on him and try to do whatever. And I'll throw this in too, since I'm talking about kind of that kind of mentoring. Sometimes the mentor is really, really smart, which I'm not always the best, but I know I've had a couple of those good moments, great moments. Sometimes it takes the mentor to step back because another person can say it maybe in the same way, and they'll be more receptive than if you say it. If you're in that leadership role, if that makes any sense. And with a son, sometimes it's a peer or peer mentor with him. If they can get a really great peer mentor, by the way, they're worth gold. But a peer mentor could be that person that could say the same thing mom or dad would say, but say it in a way that that son or that daughter would be able to understand it, and then they come back to you and it's like, oh yeah. And you have to be humble, because you could say, if you're not humble, oh, I told you that before. What? No, instead of you doing that, you say, oh, you act as if it happened the first time. But you were the one that probably wanted to institute that. It just wasn't going to be heard from you, but maybe someone else could say it in a way that they would understand it at that time point. And it happens that way a lot. I think great leaders are the ones that they are really, really smart. They know that they can't interject everything, but there are people around them when they make those connections and the networking and all of that can say the same things they would want to have said, except it's going to be accepted a different way because it was accepted a different way, if that makes sense.
Total sense, Calvin. So it sounds like leadership it's all in the timing. And
Yes.
I'm so glad you used the example of the party, because as we record this episode, it's Christmas 2025. And
Yes. Yeah.
I've been to, again this year and many, many years, I've been to the staff Christmas party for the companies I've worked for. And I've seen kind of three different things leaders do. Some leaders just straight out, they don't attend. They say, I don't
Yes.
socialize.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
think that's such a loss. They've missed out
Yes.
there. And we've
Yes.
missed out with being able to connect on a social level. So
Right.
and then you get the leaders who kind of go all out and stay till the end, and they're doing sambuca shots, and they're probably gone a little too
They
far,
probably
and
going a little too far.
you
Yes.
struggle
Yeah.
to I don't know if you lose a little respect for them, or you certainly become a little too familiar and a bit matey with them, and it's all a bit
Yes.
awkward on
Yes.
Monday in the office.
It is that. You nailed it. You nailed it, David, because if they don't time it just right and they don't stay too long, can almost be perfect. I'll give you an example. There was a lady, and I learned this. I don't think I said who I learned some of this timing stuff from when it comes to parties in particular. But there was a lady who was a leader early in my career, and what I realized from her was part of this: not to go to the after party, to always show up at the parties, especially if you're invited. You got to be there, because you said it is a miracle moment. You have to be there. And even if you're only there for a little while, you came. And it means something to those people who are working for you or working with you. It's more of they feel like you're working with them as opposed to you're here and they're here, that you're up here and they're here. And then, and if you're smart, you don't overdo it. You don't drink too much. You don't do whatever, because they could lose respect. But you want to get just enough in so that and make sure everyone sees you, and then you leave. Well, she was incredible about this. And sometimes people will say, oh, she was there the entire time. It's like, no, she was only there for like 20, 30 minutes, but she picked her points. She made sure that everyone saw her. She did those gracious things, those relationship type things, didn't stand by the wall. Again, throw that in with the timing piece. She engaged, and she did what she needed to, and then she was gone. And so it taught me a couple of things. Number one, I mean, you never get those types of opportunities in the regular workplace, work time. You have to engage in those social times, because sometimes those are the better times when you break down those barriers and you build more trust. But then you can overdo it. And so you need to learn how to back off and make that time, but then make the time to head on out the door when it's time. Because they'll probably be discussing if they're going to be going to an after party. And even someone may even offer you to come, but you say thanks, but no thanks. You always have something else to do or somewhere else to go to. Got to be somewhere, because you know that's overstepping that boundary. That's a boundary that you need to keep.
I love it, Calvin. And
Yeah.
key thing being there, maintaining those boundaries. I want to quote. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and I want to quote the guy who was being interviewed. It was pretty good guest. I think he was called something like Dr. Lawrence. But what he was saying was, and I'm going to butcher this, but he was saying that people don't, people in terms of people who are being led, they don't care about what you know as a boss. They don't care about what you know. They care that they know that you care about them.
Yes, correct. There was an educational statement too that said that about children. Children don't care how much you know. They definitely don't, because you can have all these great titles, and it means a hill of beans or nothing really to them. But what they're looking for is this consistency, and that you really, really dutifully care about them. And this is going back to being not being a phony, but being yourself. And if you really do care and you're there for the right reasons, they'll see it, they'll adhere to it. It will break down barriers, it will build trust, and you'll get a whole lot more of those people. But most people, maybe I don't need to say that. I'll say it this way: a lot of leaders don't quite get that, especially in the early going. They just figure, because of the title, because of who I am, you're going to respect me and you're going to do the things that we require. Instead, I think the best leaders come in, and they come in like they're with the people, and they build the trust, and they do those things that we're talking about in terms of, yeah, I know that you care about me, maybe even beyond this position. And that speaks volumes. And if there's a difference between my job here and a job somewhere else, and the pay is pretty close, I'm staying with you. I'm staying with you, because I know what you value. You value me, as opposed to just being someone in a position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've heard that people have, you see these quotes, people don't leave jobs or employers, people leave bosses. And I've
People
I've
leave
been in that
bosses.
position, and
People leave. Yeah.
I've chose to
Yes.
actively stay somewhere, and maybe the
Yes.
position and the benefits have been pretty poor, and the company's maybe been poor as well, but the leader's been great. And I've
The leader's been
literally
great.
said to people, and even now,
Yes.
this is leaders I haven't worked with for half a decade, or some of them even over a decade now. I said, if he rang me right now, or if she rang me, I would run through fire for her if that's what
Yes.
she needed, because I
Yes.
felt so strongly about those leaders. And I really did feel like that at the time, and I still
Yeah.
feel like it now. That's such a
Yeah.
profound impact, because they made me feel seen and heard. They
Yes.
they kept shining a mirror on me and telling me this is what you're truly capable of, and they never ever gave up on me. Even when I no longer worked for them, they'd still be
Right.
checking in like you do, Calvin. They were checking
Yep.
in. How's it going? What are you up to? What are you doing next? What are you doing next year? I feel that they've got my corner. And if I really
Right.
needed them in a crisis, I know without a doubt they'd be there for me.
I, I totally agree, David. Those people are worth more than the differences in the paycheck or whatever, and like you saying, the benefits or whatever might be better in another place. But you can't put a price tag or a number value on having a great relationship with a great leader, great boss, whatever you want to call it, that person that looks out for you and cares about you, and would take you to whatever level. And like you said, you'd run through a wall for them. I mean, that right there just tells me something. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm blessed to have had such great leaders in my life. I'm looking at one right
Yes.
now. So I do want to come on and talk a little about the book in today's
Yeah.
episode. We can't
Yes,
not.
sir.
But before we do that, we spoke a little while ago about we were planning this podcast episode and we came up with we were wanted to make the episode for our former selves back when we were resisting leadership and trying to avoid leadership. And I know I had many reasons that I was putting it off for years and years, despite being told, you've
Yes,
got leadership within you. I was saying, no, no, that's
yes.
the last thing I want. Get away from me. Um, but I'm curious as to what do you think, Calvin, are the reasons, the main reasons young people are resisting leadership when perhaps we need leaders more than ever before?
You're right. I think there's a lack of good leadership at the top. Some of the great leaders are retiring or passing on, and we need more. And with the issues at hand in the world, we need more great leadership than we've ever needed, maybe at any time that man has been around. So, what's the reason that a lot of people just stay away from it? Is it just fear of failure? I think there's a piece to that because I know that there's research out there, and I wish I had it, that says that most first time leaders fail. So there's this fear of failure thing. Uh, people are maybe more image conscious now, David, than they have ever been. And we've got the social. I don't want to pick on social media too much, but I guess I'll pick on it a little bit. We've got these social platforms where then that image is out there about you and the failures that you have, and I think people take it the wrong way. And who was it? We just a little while ago, I attended a graduation, my first graduation, by the way, as a school board member, and it was a graduation for graduates who attend a school that's alternative to the regular high school or the regular secondary school, however you guys, the primary school, however you guys term it. And so these guys are the students who are supposed to fail. They're not supposed to make it, and they're not supposed to really. They're kind of like what I would say. And we're at Christmas time, so there's a movie about Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and in it they have the misfit toys. Well, these kids are the misfits. They're the kids that maybe nobody wanted, nobody really cared to care about them or spend time with them to figure out what we were talking about before, who they were and what is their purpose. And so to get these guys turned around and to get them to have a graduation is a pretty powerful thing. But at the graduation, there was a young man who came, and he was one of the first graduates that had ever been in this particular program. And he spoke to them. What he spoke to them about was, and he has become now, the way he was talking, he's become a millionaire. But he was one of those kids who people had given up on. And because he didn't get given up on, and somebody cared about him and believed in him, he was able to not just survive, but he thrived. So his message to the guys that were on that platform, who were on the stage, who were graduating, was that they could do it too. That if he could do it, he had been one of those guys that nobody really cared about. Family life at home wasn't very good. Didn't have great role models, but he had at least one role model and somebody who cared about him. And he was able to make it through. And now he's doing some really great things. And I can't even go through the list of all the things, but his speech was very impactful to those students. And I thought, this is what it's all about. It's this kind of thing. Get people turned around, show them what their purpose is in life, and give them kind of a goal to shoot for. Because if they don't, then they're going to have problems figuring out, oh, I don't want to try for that because it's too strong or it's too hard or whatever. But I do think, to me, the fear and the image pieces are the probably the most difficult things for maybe the younger generation to figure out. Do I want to even tackle that? Do I want to even struggle with that? And the thing that he was saying, and the reason that I shared the story, now it's coming to me, was that he said, take a negative and turn it into a positive. Well, my thing, and I wrote it down, because my thing is that old Star Wars Yoda, the little green guy with the great brilliant mind, he always used to say failure, and he talked in reverse. So I got to do this in reverse. Failure, the best teacher is. So the best teacher is failure. And what this guy was saying was take a negative, whatever that negative might be, people told you couldn't make it or whatever, and turn it into a positive. It's kind of like, I'll show you, you show them that you can do it. And it's hard, but I think if they have a role model and they have, going back to our mentor thing, we talked about this. If you got at least one person believing in you, you can start grasping what you can be and what you can do. And going back to the thing that we talked about in terms of figuring out who you are first and being intentional about it, because I think that's a big problem. I don't think a lot of young people, there's some, but there are a lot of young people out there that are kind of in the middle, kind of really gray area where, who am I? What's this all about? Do I need to go to school? Do I need to go to trade school? Do I need to go to the military? What do I need to do? Well, let's get that part figured out first. Let's get you figured out first before we worry about any of the other stuff, which I think we do the opposite in a lot of places in cases. And so I think that makes that leadership piece even harder now for these guys. I'm mentioning two, and I'm struggling trying to find the third one, but I think these first two are really pretty good because what I've seen, I've been close enough. I had a son who's 25, but in this time frame that I've been watching young people trying to figure out stuff, it's like every time you come up on someone, they're still trying to figure out if I'm really, and if they're really honest about it, who they are more so than what they need to do or be. And we do all the stuff about what you need to do or be, but we don't spend a lot of good time, David. Maybe some families do, and those are the good ones. But there are a lot of families who don't have it figured out, and then they're broken families, and the kids have to try to figure it out, and they don't know how to. I think I'll stop right there because maybe another one will come in our conversation. But those two are good to start with.
Thank you so much, Calvin. There was so much to unpack there, but as you were speaking, a lovely thing happened. I just recalled a story of myself when I was in year one back at school. I would have been what, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. And it was probably younger than that. And I had a teacher, her name was Miss Beresford. I really didn't get on with her. I was misbehaving. My grades were terrible. My mother was being dragged into school every Friday. It was dire. I was on track for total and utter catastrophic failure, Calvin, honestly. And then I remembered there was a teacher, the second year teacher, her name was Miss Coleman. With Miss Coleman, within weeks, she turned it all around, and I was up there with the best of them in the class. I adored her, and to this day, I remember her face vividly, and I remember just being such a fan. We used to write to her and send her Christmas cards decades later after I was at that school, and that was the power of one teacher. And she used to tell my mother I was gifted, and she believed in me. And then prior to the teacher before basically couldn't stand me. I don't blame her.
Right.
I was a terror.
Yeah.
My behavior was I was a terror. But I do not know to this day what she really did. But that was the power of this teacher. Whatever she did as a leader, she came in, she turned it all around for me within weeks.
Wow, David, that is so beautiful and so powerful. Think about the power of words. And you're a wordsmith, you're a storyteller, and then what she said about you being gifted, and you were on the track to go in the other direction. Where if you had gone the other direction, and for someone to say you're gifted, and you're like, in your mind, I guess you're questioning it, but she saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself at the time. She could already see it, and I gotta give kudos to that teacher because everybody needs to have at least one teacher like that. I had one too. I can't forget her name. Her name was Dora Harris, and she was my fourth grade teacher until that time period. And I wasn't maybe getting in trouble as much. Maybe I was close behind you, or maybe on that track. But when I got to her class, it was the class that I just kind of like, ooh, the light bulb came on. And I throw that quick story in. It's in the book. I won a spelling bee because I wanted her name at the top with my name, because her name was going to go up there with who was in her classroom. And so I was bound and determined that I was going to win this spell. Well, I have not won a spelling bee before or since, but I won that year because I wanted her to be at the number one spot, and that's what happened. So people can really make a difference in your life. There's another piece that I can say about that too. History, because of her, history was her number one thing, and she took us all these places, and I learned so much. So it just expanded my mind, and I've never been anything but a history buff since. So I'll throw that in there too.
Thank you. Thank you, Calvin.
Yeah.
There sure are some relatable stories of influence and hope
Yes.
floating around in today's conversation.
Yes. Yes, for
But,
sure.
I'll just throw in on that topic we were talking about as the reason why people resist leadership. I resisted it for so long because I grew up, my number one role model being my dad, who was a manager at work. He managed construction sites, builders, all the rest of them. It's funny that your book's called The Happy Leader, because for years and years and years, I didn't think it was possible to be those two things at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's a contradiction. Hey, I will tell you this, David. This is a funny to the side, but maybe it makes a lot of sense because it goes right to the contradiction of being a happy leader. When I submitted my book title to the publishers, they rejected it, and my editor, and I think it was because they thought, is he saying something kind of undertone, like there was a movie years ago, it's probably before your time, it was called The Happy Hooker. And so I'm not sure if, and I think they have hookers in the UK, I'm not sure, but I know they have them in the US. And so I'm not sure if they thought, man, this is not a G-rated book. And so they stopped it right there, because how can a person be a happy leader? It must be something else that he's implying. And it wasn't. And so anyway, after they reviewed it and they saw what was in the writings, they realized there was no innuendo about anything that was X-rated or anything like that. But you're right. Some people have this connotation that in order to be a leader, you've got to be this gruff, tough, bossy person who dominates and humiliates, and it's the total opposite.
Wow. Thank you for saying that, Calvin. Because, like you say, I just had this image that leadership, it means stress, it means pressure, a little
Yes,
more money, yeah,
yes,
but hey, 10% more money, 100% more pressure. And I heard things like,
hey,
it's lonely at the top. And I saw,
yes.
leaders for years in all different sectors and backgrounds pulling their hair out with stress. You can always find them in schools in the UK. I'm sure you can
You
in
can
the US.
always find them in schools. You can
In
find these people.
any
Yeah,
organization, you see it. You
yeah.
can see the stress and pressure of and the
Yeah.
loneliness of being at the top, and you think, why the heck would anyone want that?
Why would anyone want to be that type of person? Hey, so David, this is why it's so good to talk with you, because whenever I talk with you, my mind starts to race too, and it's like you flipped over that and you have it on your book. So it's like the thing that you just said in relationship to being happy, I think that's another piece to that puzzle in terms of why young people, emerging folks who could be leaders, decide not to, because they see what you're talking about, or they envision that, or they have this image of it from whatever they've read or whatever they've seen in the past, that there's too much pressure, there's too much stress. You threw a second one in there about the loneliness, and I'm a disengage that one if I can, because what I'm learning more so every day that I'm around this earth and trying to be a happy leader is that you don't have to be lonely unless you just want to. And so, and to be a great leader, to be a effective leader, you cannot be lonely, because I just got through saying, right, that you have to do the relationship thing, right? So where does loneliness fit into that? But more importantly, if I'm going to be a great leader, I have to learn from leaders, which also means that I have to do my due diligence and work on communicating which I've had to work on that, David. I'm going to just tell you that's one of my weaknesses. I have not always been the greatest at that, but I'm getting better. And I think my wife would even say that I'm getting better to work on communicating, to work on connecting with people who know, because I don't have all the answers. And the old model of leadership might have been you have to be the guy to know all the answers, the girl to know all the answers. It's lonely at the top. Don't let anybody else in. Keep everybody else out. The new model, the model that I aspire to or adhere to is it's not lonely at the top. You learn from other leaders. You learn the best practices. You mix in with the people. You get the best ideas. You make sure you acknowledge these other people because they have. I do it in the book for sure. Acknowledge that my best ideas have come from others. Give them the credit. Give them their kudos. But connect and stay connected because the only way that I can stay on top in order to be effective to help the people who are around me is to be connected with other people. And so if I isolate, then I'm modeling isolation and I'm modeling that they should isolate. Shouldn't be that way. We should be connected. We should be interconnected. We should have enough of an understanding of each other so that we know when people are down, when they're hurting. I mean, we could avoid a lot of different issues that we have in the workplace: suicide, dementia, demented attempts on different things. We could definitely avoid or be more adverse to those negative things if we interact and if we keep checks on each other in a positive way and in a professional way. And I think that's the new model, and I'm hoping that people will kind of come to understand that.
Thank you, Calvin. You're making me think a couple of things. Firstly, Tony Robbins, I think it is, that says you get more of what you focus on. If you're actively looking for lonely leaders, you'll find them. If you're looking
You'll
for
get them.
social
Right.
leaders, you'll find them as well, because it's different styles, different personal preferences. Like you say, you can be lonely at the top or lonely at the bottom or anywhere in between. But the other thing you're making me think of, and bear with me on this while I formulate it, is I've heard that your network is your net worth. So, or your net
Right.
worth is your network. And for me, then,
Right.
if we're saying, if in leadership terms, if the currency is your ability to influence, if the currency is the ability to influence, then your network is your net worth. So that the more well you are connected throughout the organization, the more trust you have with other leaders and the
Yes.
people below and above and at the sides of you in the organization chart, an organizational structure, that will
Yes.
directly correlate with your ability to lead effectively.
It will. So let me give you something that's new, and I guess it's definitely new because I'm just now a new school board member, and I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work out, David. So I'm kind of projecting into the future. But what you just got through saying is a big piece of what this board that I'm a part of now, a 7-member person board. Each of us have pretty much the same power, and we vote as a group. And one of our biggest issues will be trust and trust building in the community. But when you say network, which is the group of people that we relate to, is our net worth. The net worth, meaning whatever you want to, and I'll start out with a dollar sign, but or the pound sign, but whatever you want to call it, then it's vital that in my new role, I do as much networking as I can to a deep, deep level because if we do it well, our net worth will increase exponentially. And we'll be able to do the things, we'll be able to pass the things that we need to get done in order to affect the most people. We may not, however, and I will always say this, ever get 100% buy in, but we can get the critical mass, which is one of my favorite terms. And critical mass may be the majority or it may be the people who come out to vote. Whatever that critical mass is, we will get it because we'll get the buy-in because we'll have the net worth that will increase our net worth. And if I don't get anything out of this from you, I've gotten that. That is powerful in itself. So I'm going to take that back to my group when we meet the next time coming into the new year because it's important to think about it from that standpoint. And they do think about a lot of things financially. How are we going to impact this district and all these kids in this community from a financial standpoint? Well, I'm gonna tell you how you can do it. And I learned this from a guy named David Garwood in the UK. And it is our network is going to be essential to our net worth. And I think they will all be able to, and then I'll spell it out. I think they'll all be able to understand that because they can see it. We've got to do some things before we can move forward. But the network that we build out, is going to be vital for us in terms of our success.
Thank you, Calvin. I'll take the only credit I'll take. I'll say I planted the seed, but
you
you grew
gotta,
the.
you gotta
I
take
planted the
one.
seed, you grew the plant. Credit back to you, honestly. You know, it's interesting you talk about the power of networking. I've been in some end of year kind of business review groups that I'm in, some peer groups, accountability groups, and we've all been talking about KPIs and how do you measure the success of
Yes.
business networking.
Yes.
And it suddenly came to me while you were talking there. So, for me, I know I've been successful at networking this year because people are talking about me in rooms that I'm not even in.
That you're not there. Yes, yes.
And I'm getting sort of referrals and mentions and people contacting me that are happening, and I'm not even having to be present anymore because people are indirectly, I haven't asked them to, I'm certainly not paying them to, they're choosing to talk about me in rooms where I'm not present, and I'm doing the same for them. And we've, like I say, we never contracted to, we never said we'd do it, but it's all organically happened because we believe in each other, we trust each other, and we're just supporting each other. So I guess it's a little like leadership, eh?
It is. It is. It's definitely that, David. You got it.
Another thing I want to ask you on the book, Calvin, is, and I know I've heard you say this in several other podcasts, but I want you to say it again because I'm a visual person and I'm all into imagery. Tell us about why you chose to put a lighthouse on the front of it.
So and I love that question because when I was asked at the very beginning, well, what do you want to do for your cover? And my graphic designers talked about, what you might want to think about is something that relates to your upbringing, your foundation. What are you grounded and rooted in? And it didn't come to me right off the bat, David, but it did eventually because I thought about where I grew up. I grew up near the water. I still love the water, by the way. I still love to go to the beach. I still love to go when the ocean waves hit the sand. I feel like I'm home wherever I'm at. It doesn't make a difference. And so one of the first things when I came to Texas, where I am at in Texas, I'm landlocked. And my wife wanted to make me feel more at home. Well, she bought these things, these pillows, these little replicas of lighthouses to put them in the house, and they were all right there. So in my mind, I went back to that image. I said, what makes me feel like I'm home? What makes me feel safe? What makes me feel like, and then when you think about the lighthouse, there are all these different images that come to play. So let me see if I can hit on some of them. You've got this welcoming beacon of light that goes out, that shoots out. It's like, come to me. I am here. I want to make you feel at home. Well, what leader would not want to do that? What leader would not want to make you feel like this is a place for you to stay and grow and be the best you? But then there's also, when it comes to the lighthouse, that beacon of safety. It's like now the light is shining on these rough edges, these rocks that are out in the ocean that might tip you up, that might destroy your boat, that might take you off course. But the lighthouse is this safety beacon, and it keeps you from running and wrecking yourself. And so it's like, so you have these, I think those are the two most powerful pieces when it comes to that imagery. And it's like, yes, if I'm a leader, I want to welcome and I want to provide safety and security. And if I can do those two things, then the people around me can flourish. And I'm just going to naturally be happy because everybody in that environment will be happy, right? So the lighthouse was just that was it. And once we got that, and it was just now a matter of the image that we wanted for it with the light. He also added a compass because there's a compass there at the bottom, and it shows the direction. Directionality goes with regard to this whole lighthouse piece. But yeah, that was it. Yeah, that's the short version.
And thank you for sharing again, Calvin. I've heard that a few times on various podcasts, but
Yeah,
I'm glad you shared it because it really brings it to life for me. Because as we always say, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we do. We do.
we do. We do. We look at a book cover and it's like, and what's the title? And what does it say? And I know I had some other titles, David. I don't even want to go into them because some of the titles were sad that I came up with by myself. This title, since we're going in that direction, came out of some reflection. But a friend of mine, I have to give her credit. Her name is Rachel Randolph. And she said to me, you know, you should just say the happy leader because that's who you are. And I thought about it. I said, am I really that? I guess I am a little happy. Most of the times, some people could say I'm wacky, but I probably don't want to say wacky leader. I'm probably going to say the happy. So I went with happy. And then what happened after that, and you can relate to this because it was about having these stories. And I knew that the book was going to be powerful if I told these stories about these amazing people in my life. And so it's a story of hope. It's a story that you can relate to. I hope you can, whether you're on either side of the pond. I think you can relate to these stories, these people who just kept coming into my life, who just kept making life better. Even when I had these what I call those desert times, those real dry times. Even when I had those, there were people who were there to help guide me out of those problem times and into and also we're going back to the learning from the mistakes and the failures and how can I capitalize or how can I get better? How can I learn to not make that mistake again or learn through those mistakes? And I did, and I think I'll continue to do that and that's what I will try to do, imply. So yeah, yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Calvin. I'm going to disclosure for everyone. Haven't read this book end to end, but that's because I'm actually a very slow reader and I'm very easily distracted. I'm someone who has 10 books on the go all at the same time, falling off the side cabinet next to the bed because I have so many. But what I have done with this, I've enjoyed dipping into it, and I've enjoyed those
Yes,
earlier sections about your background and how that you have become the man you are today. And then the later sections, I've loved those nuggets of wisdom and key takeaways. It's almost I've just opened it at a time I felt a little unsure, and that the just the right message, the right thing I needed to hear and see and read has just reached me. So I fully implore everyone listening to this episode, if you're able to and you're lucky enough to grab a copy of this book, and I'm going to stick a link in the bottom of the show notes across all the platforms that we're broadcasting this on. But to stay on the topic of the book, I have three main questions for you on this book.
okay.
But in summary, I want to ask you, what was the two of them are, what was the easiest chapter to write for you, and what was the most challenging chapter to write for you? Feel free to
Oh
start
wow.
wherever you like on that one.
Okay. All right. So easiest and the hardest, easiest
Yeah.
and the most difficult. Wow. So David, I've had a lot of podcasts and no one has asked me that question in that way. So this is going to be interesting how I answer it because I think I know the answer and I think the easiest one is the easiest one. So that first chapter was the one I knew was going to be easy. And even though it kind of goes back deep into my history, it was the one that maybe I have some of my fondest memories of. And it's foundational because it's about my mom and my dad. And I think I told you this story. I have to tell on myself. So this is one of those bad deals where that's who I am. So it took me 5 years to write the book, but really not 5 years. I stopped out 1 year because I didn't think I could do it. So I got a little bit of that first chapter done, and then I had the skeletal outline of the chapters that I wanted to write about. I think I had all 12 or whatever, and then I stopped out, and it was like, no, I can't do it. I won't be able to do it. And then my mom passed away, and then I realized that if I didn't get the story written, then her story would not be told. Her story, my father's story, that foundational story, which I thought was really, really powerful, where I grew up and the historical context of it and all of it. So it pushed me to get back on track the last 3 years. In fact, the last 2 years, I really wrote probably 80% of the book. And so, but the easiest chapter was that first chapter because of mom and dad, and because it was so my they gave us such my sister and I, because I have a sister 2 years younger. They gave us such a great background foundationally that I don't know of too many parents who could have done what they did with the resources that they had. And so I commend them. I know I wonder sometimes if we talked about not being judgmental and comparative in terms of, because we're all sort of different. When I mess up, I try to compare myself to my mom and my dad, and I know I fall short. When I do right, I know that I have a different set of circumstances than they had, and with my resources, they were different and everything, and so it helps me to kind of put that into justification. But it was the easiest one. The hardest one, if I can switch gears just a little bit, the hardest chapter to write was that Desert Storm, the desert time chapter, where it's somewhere near the middle, a little bit past the middle part of the book, where I start talking about the times that were failures in my life. So going back to, like, I'm talking about the young people having problems with how do you overcome failure and how do you go into leadership without failing. Well, you're going to fail. Let's just put it like that. But now it's what you do in the failure moments that defines a man. I think Martin Luther King has this thing about character, and the tough times are what defines who you really are. And think about a man like Martin Luther King Jr., who the tough times really defined it, who he was and his leadership style, because it was through all of the tough times that we come to know him as being the person that he was. So for me, it was going back into some things that I want to say in my mind, I really wanted to just disavow myself of. But I had to go back and dig in. And the reason why I did was because I hope someone will learn from those stories. It's like when I told a story about the kid who wanted to commit suicide, and he was in my building, and I was an assistant principal, and he told me because he trusted me, but I didn't want it to just stop right there, and I didn't want him to commit that act, and I wanted to tell him how much of a failure I had thought of myself at certain times, but I called it the late bloomer because I said many of us are late bloomers, and my life has become blossom, but it didn't start out that way. It's kind of like the ugly duckling that's an ugly duck until he becomes a beautiful swan, or whatever you want to start out with. You could say the cocoon for the moth that becomes this beautiful butterfly. Sometimes these beautiful things don't start out that way. I always have to say most of the times they don't start out beautifully, but if you hang in there and you stick with it and you come through those tough times and you have good people around you, you can make it. So for me, it was very difficult. Some of the tough times still stick with me. It's like, could I have done better? But I did learn from each one. And I hope I didn't repeat, because I think each story is a little bit different. Didn't repeat the same mistakes, but I learned from each mistake, and it made me stronger as a leader. I will tell you, David, because we had a joke. We joked about the party story and all of this stuff about leaders not knowing when to leave and when to come in or when to stay. Uh, I think what it did too was help me to figure out that timing piece and to be more to be more relatable, if and I love that word, and to also be more forgiving, because there are people who you're going to have who are going to have some hard times, and sometimes what they need is some forgiveness. And so, and even the ones who kind of hurt me, having to work through that, it helped me to work through the forgiveness part, because I have to, because Bishop Desmond Tutu once said years ago, he said, bitter people don't get better. So this relates directly to the happy leader. You cannot be bitter in the role of a leader. You cannot stay bitter in the role of a leader. That means you can't hold on to angst or unforgiveness. You got to let it go at some point. You got, even if people have done you wrong, and they will, you got to let it go because the bitterness will hold you back. And so I've learned that is another piece of being a happy leader is to not be held back by those negative accounts, to deal with those, to not just put them aside somewhere where they kind of just stay and fester, but to deal with it and then move forward, learn from it, help someone else to maybe avoid it or to maybe at least process through if they're going through the tough times. It helps me to do that with someone else who's coming through because I know I've gone through them. Yeah. I hope that answer. That's a way
Well,
long one.
I knew there was a reason I told people at the beginning to strap themselves in, and there it was, folks. Rewind the last 5 minutes and listen to it again because I know I am going to several times. Do you know everything you just said? I loved it. I'm so glad that you mentioned that it took 5 years or over 5 years to write this
Yeah,
book because,
yeah,
as you said earlier, social media portrays overnight successes. You do something,
right,
it goes viral. That's how you become successful. That's
right.
not always the case. The greatest things in life take a long time to put together. Masterpieces like this one here didn't happen overnight. It took over 5 years, folks. There's a lesson in that. Don't give up. There's so much in
Don't
that.
give
But
up.
I
Right.
love that your favorite chapter was the first chapter. Doesn't surprise me because you're a masterful storyteller, and I don't know anyone who is better at attributing praise and recognition to other people that have done them proud and done them well. And I know you do that masterfully in this book. And it also, as you say, relatable stories. I don't think there's anyone listening who can't relate to how difficult it is talking about all the times you've failed, the mistakes you've made,
Mhm.
and the things that you regret. Because I know I, sure as anything, I
Mhm.
can. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Thanks,
thank you.
David.
Wow.
I, I appreciate it. Anyway, yeah, you know how to dig you know how to dig the good stuff out of me because I wasn't even thinking we'd go in that direction. But that's one that makes me think. And even now, it's like I make sure that I don't hold any grudges, that I don't hold them long. If I have, oh, I'll throw this in. So during this campaign, political stuff is tough anywhere and everywhere. I'm sure it's tough across the pond, just like it's tough here. And I had never done politics before. Not like this. I've only voted. I've not run for anything. So it was very difficult. And it's difficult even now that I've won an election, but I know that there were people who did not vote for me. So part of the deal is, and I have to understand this, is that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I can work for everyone. Even if they didn't vote for me, I'm still going to serve them the same way with the fervor and the vigor and the positivity that I would serve if they had voted for me from day one, and maybe even a little bit more. Because what I want to do is let them know that I am here for them, that the reason that I ran was not a personal reason or personal agenda reason, but it was because I feel like I can do some service for my community. And this is a way to have an impact. And I'm going to use that capacity word again. I'm trying to increase my capacity to serve. And this is one of those ways that I'm increasing capacity to serve. And we're going to see if I can reach that ceiling or not. I don't think I can because I think every time I get to where I think it's the top, that ceiling just kind of moves up a little bit higher. And it's like, oh, you can do more. You can do more. And so I'm hoping that that'll be the case that as I'm serving, as I'm working with people, as I'm learning, as I'm growing, I'll be able to do more.
Well, it strikes me that even if as that old saying goes, if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you're going to end up amongst
Yes.
the stars.
You
And you
still
already
end up
have, in
among the
my
stars.
opinion. You already
Yeah.
have because you're a star to me. But no, my third and final question, which again is maybe a little brave, and maybe this isn't the right thing to
Uh-oh.
ask an author, but I want to ask it anyway because I know that you've got such a drive for personal development. I want to ask you, Calvin, if you were going to write this book again from the beginning, is there anything that you would do differently on reflection?
On reflection. So I think what I might do, David, is what I did was I limited myself to 12 chapters. And sometimes I think even now, I mean, who knows? This could be the third book because I think I shared with you the second book will be a workbook. And so after that, who knows, I may have an extension. And somebody just said the other day, well, now you have a campaign and all the stuff that went on during the campaign, I have to keep the names out, but I could work on it from that standpoint. But I did. At the beginning, I had this in my head. I had 12 is a neat number. I'll stick with 12. I'll stay to 12. But I think what happened was when I got to the 12 chapters, like I could probably write more, but maybe I need to get this thing finished. So let's get it done. But I guess the conundrum is I left some things out, but it always leaves room for another book. And so that would be the thing that don't limit yourself. And if I had to share it with someone, I would say you might have a limit, but don't limit yourself. You may have a vision of what you think it should be, but as you write, don't limit yourself and listen to the experts, because I did. I listened to people who had done the author thing prior, and even my first editor, had written 5 books herself, so she gave me some advice. But don't limit yourself, pre-limit yourself to the point where, oh, I could have done this, I could have that. So if I was going to do it again, who knows? It could have been 12, 13, 14 chapters or more.
I love how you framed that answer, Calvin. I knew you'd frame it well, but definitely through the lens of personal development and self-improvement and never being finished and never being happy with where you're at, because there's always something left to do.
Yes.
So as we bring this fantastic episode to a close, which I just knew it was going to be incredible, and it's been even better than I ever imagined. So I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm so pumped. What I want to just say to you in a nutshell is just a huge thank you for coming on to the show today and for granting me some of your time. I would love to grill you on every question about leadership that I've ever had and ever will have. And I definitely would love to have you on the show again. And I'm sure if I asked all my guests what questions they'd like to ask you, I'd have a list as long as my arm, and we'd have to do a 10-hour episode.
I hope I have enough steam and enough information for 10 hours, but I would love to, David. Every time we get together, it's like it's an amazing journey, and I look forward to it. There are a couple of podcasts that I've kind of dreaded. I hate to say that. I won't call any names, so that's not calling anybody out. But this one in particular, in the way you do it and the way you frame it, we always go in the direction that we need to go in. I may linger too long on 1 or 2 questions, but hopefully someone gets something out of it. And I try to say enough and share enough stories that it hits the mark. Yeah.
No, it's been great, and I'm already thinking I might end up with a title such as "The Beacon of Leadership," Dr. Calvin Lawrence, ladies and gentlemen. But no, thank you again for coming on. And for anyone listening who wants to find out more and get in touch with you and follow you, I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes. But what would you recommend they do if they want to reach out and get in touch?
I would recommend that my website is calvinlawrencespeaks.net. If you go on there, the book is even there. But you can also contact me through that modicum. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So if you see me on LinkedIn, please friend me there. We'll go and we'll have conversations. I'm looking forward to talking with whoever I can. And I get as much out of the conversations, just like today. I mean, David, you just gave me some nuggets that I can take back to the board. And I'll say, hey, and I got to give you the credit because, this was just great. And I just love having the conversation.
You're a natural storyteller, and you're a beacon of hope and a fountain of knowledge for all things leadership. So yes, I'm afraid I'm going to be in touch with you a great deal next year, and I have many more questions to ask you after the show.
I'm looking
thank you
forward
again
to
for
it,
coming
David.
on the show, and
Thank you.
been a total honor and a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, David. I feel the same.
Thank you for listening to the Solo Coach Podcast. I've been your host, David Garwood, and you've been my fabulous listener. If you'd like to find out more, check out thesolocoach.co.uk, @thesolocoach on Insta, and David the Solo Coach on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed the episode, I would love for you to leave a comment or a review and tell me what you enjoyed most about this week's episode. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.